Welcome, everyone, to the Penny Stamps Distinguished Speaker Series. My name is Christina Hamilton, the series director, and today we are thrilled to the gills to present painter, sculptor, and filmmaker Titus Kaphar. Yeah, it's exciting, folks. It's exciting. This is not easily done. A big thank you to our partners in this endeavor, as today's program is presented in partnership with the University of Michigan Museum of Art as part of the university's 37th annual MLK Symposium honoring the legacy of and the civil rights work of Dr. Martin Luther King. And additional support from the Arts Initiative, the Office for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, UM's Democracy and Debate, and our series partners, Detroit Public Television and Michigan Radio 91.7 FM. So folks, the journey of how a guest makes it here to the Penny Stamps stage is a map with many routes. Titus Kaphar's path has been a long and winding one, perhaps especially considering he is actually a Michigan native. I looked back through a copious amount of correspondence this morning to find the point at which this conversation began, and I can report to you it was 8 years ago in 2015. So it's particularly rewarding to host him now finally after all the twists and turns of getting him here, and of course, extra thanks and kudos are due to UMMA, who acquired his work for us all to see and is our key partner in making his arrival here today. I offer deep gratitude and a shout out to our terrific colleagues at UMMA who are here in the house with us today. They are doing extraordinary work to engage and confront the issues that we grapple with as a society today. They offer us an opportunity for greater understanding and the resilience to what it is we need to face in this world that we live in. So if you haven't spent time at UMMA lately, there's much to take in, and if you've been there recently, it changes all the time. So I suggest everyone make it a regular place to visit. Just one announcement before we get going. There is an event I need to tell you about that is on Saturday. Some of you here will remember I announced a number of times in the fall about the competition, Songs for Democracy. Their grand finale is happening on Saturday. There is a free concert at Hill Auditorium at 7:30 p.m. There are 5 finalist groups of students who will perform their compositions, and you can vote for the winner. That's 7:30 Saturday, Hill Auditorium. We are going to have a regular Q&A today. There are microphones that you will find at the ends of each of the aisles. When we get to that point, you can come and line up there to ask your questions. Please do remember to silence your cell phones. And now for a proper introduction of our guest today, please welcome one of the great UMMA team members, Assistant Curator of Global Contemporary Art, Ozi Uduma.
Good evening, everyone. Before we begin, I just want to give a special thanks to this year's MLK Symposium committee members, Christina Hamilton, Stamps Speaker Series Director, Christina Olson, the University of Michigan Museum of Art Director, Titus Kaphar, and all others who are doing the intentional work of creating spaces for important conversations. So I first learned of Titus Kaphar and his work during a long-standing segment on the former MSNBC show, The Melissa Harris Perry Show. The segment featured artists, cultural stewards, community organizers, and everyday people doing the critical work within their respective communities. During this 3-minute segment, the show highlighted Titus's work featured in his solo show under the guise of art moving Black Lives Matter forward. Titus's work stopped me in my tracks, and I was enthralled. And so that's why it was so exciting to welcome his art into our collection in 2019 and to welcome him as our guest lecturer tonight in Michigan Theater. For those of you who are unfamiliar with our work at UMMA, specifically Unsettling Histories, Unsettling Histories is the reinstallation of our Davidson Gallery of American and European art from the 17th, 18th, and 19th century. The goal of the reinstallation wasn't necessarily to tell an expanded story of American and European history, but more so to talk about the ways the art of these three periods were used to bolster and legitimize nationalism while invisibilizing, whitewashing, and erasing the more violent histories and stories behind these works, pushing back on ideas of neutrality, objectivity, and universality. This was an intervention, and Titus's work was the catalyst. Titus's work forces you to reckon with the truth, not the myths or the pageantry, but the truth of the matter. I want to note that we're having this conversation at a very critical time in our country, with increased mis- and disinformation, debates and bills on the teaching of critical race theory and the history of race in this country, book bans, etc. Artists like Titus force us to reckon with what's happening in front of us, to make visible the things that were purposefully invisibilized and whitewashed, to see that beauty and truth are intertwined. Titus Kaphar is an artist whose paintings, sculptures, and installations examine the history of representation by transforming its styles and mediums with formal innovations to emphasize the physicality of the canvas and the materials themselves. Born and raised in Kalamazoo, Michigan, Titus lives and works in New Haven, Connecticut. He received his MFA from the Yale School of Art and is a distinguished recipient of numerous prizes and awards, including a MacArthur Fellowship. In addition to being a working artist, Titus is also the co-founder and president of NXTHVN, a new national art model that empowers emerging artists and curators of color through education and access. Through intergenerational mentorship, professional development, and cross-sector collaboration, NXTHVN accelerates professional careers in the arts. And so it is my sincere pleasure to welcome Titus Kaphar.
Hello. You are close, I can see you. This is good. Eyes are helpful. So, it took a while for me to get back here. I apologize. I heard it was 8 years, is that right? Was it 8 years? I wanted to win a MacArthur before I came back. So, the truth, that was, okay, all right. Thank you. I actually, the truth of the matter is I kind of retired from talks for a little bit. I don't know if y'all remember, but I'm sure you remember. But there was a moment a few years ago where there were some uprisings because of black men being shot by police officers in the streets. And I found myself unable to engage on stage in this way. I felt like what I do in terms of my conversations, I felt too vulnerable in the context. I felt like I was in the process of opening myself up on stage and waiting to see if anybody, could hear me. I was encouraged by some folks who had been at some talks of mine, some young brothers who made me remember that they were in that crowd too, and that they were not just like listening, but there was some kind of resonance that made them feel better about the moment. So it's with that in mind that I go through this process, all right? The other thing is, I say this all the time and nobody believes me. I actually don't like doing this stuff. I don't. I really don't like being on stage. I don't like it at all. But every single time I do one, it leads to another one, which leads to another one. So I thought I was out of it, but I'm back. All right. So here's the thing, man. When you kind of get to wherever it is that I am right now in my career, people who knew you from the past would be like, I always knew you were gonna do something special. Always knew. I mean, I'm talking about teachers who failed you in the class were like, I always believed in you, Titus. I knew you were gonna be great. I knew it. That's a lie. It's a lie. There is no way anybody who knows me or knows my background, knows what I came from, would ever predict that I would be up on this stage right now. And I hope that this talk and that statement gives you hope. Not those of you who already know that your future is already planned out for you. Not those of you who come from a background where success is just your legacy. I'm talking about those of us who doubt. Those of us who don't come from success. Those of us who think and wonder daily, are my dreams actually achievable? I'm here for y'all. The rest of you can, play on your phones or something. Okay, this is from my first sketchbook after drawing for about 6 months to a year. So when I tell you I didn't have any inherent talent, I want you to understand I'm not making that up for the sake of drama. I think that's supposed to be a self-portrait. I'm not sure. I started drawing and I was not good, but I kept drawing because of how it made me feel. And I would draw in my little sketchbook and it was not good, and then I would turn the page and draw again, and the next day it was not good still, but it was less bad. So I could see the progress. And in the rest of my life, I could see no progress. I felt like nothing was changing. There was absolutely nothing going on. And so I just decided I'm gonna draw every day. I'm gonna draw something every day. Even if I just scribble on a piece of paper, even if I draw the apple at the table, I'm gonna draw something every day. And I didn't have a goal except for that feeling of growth. I felt that, and that was intoxicating. So, I keep drawing, I get a little bit better, and I find myself becoming interested in art, and I don't know anything about art. Let me step back for a second though, because I'm not really telling you the whole truth. The whole truth is, there was this woman that I was really interested in, and I wanted to ask her on a date, and she was like, you gotta be kidding me. First of all, you're 4 years younger than me. Second of all, you are not thinking about your future at all. And I just graduated from college and you're trying to be a rock star. I wanted to be in a band at the time. And so, I thought I was gonna be funny. So I ran down to the junior college, registered for some random classes, ran back and was like, I'm thinking about my future now. Can we go out? And she cracked up laughing and we started dating. For the record, I married her. When I find a good thing, I don't let go. So I'm confessing to you here that it wasn't just about me drawing in the sketchbook. It was somehow I had registered for an art class. I did not know that I had registered for an art class. But in order to stay in this relationship, I had to go to this damn art class. So that was what initiated this sketchbook situation, right? And that is where that feeling came from. But I had an art history class. I did really poorly in school. Anybody who's heard my TED Talk knows I did really bad in school. I mean, my GPA was 0.65. decimal point first, 6.5. I was failing at everything. So when I say I saw a little bit of success in those drawings and it like lifted me up, I promise you it was a feeling I hadn't felt before. So I get into this art history class and I'm beginning to realize that my brain works with images. Never in my life had anyone asked me to recall information based on image. It was like read the text, answer the questions. But I had dyslexia and ADD, so I was struggling all the time with that. But then I had this art history class where it was like, look at this image. Tell me about this image. Okay, I can tell you about this image. That looks like Van Gogh to me. I can tell by like all those stripes and things that are in the background. That's Van Gogh. I'm taking this class and I'm realizing like as long as I have a picture connected to it, I can remember whatever I need to. So that became my superpower. That became how I learned everything for every other class. I figured if I can put an image to it, I can remember it. So that was my strategy for doing everything. Next thing I know, I'm on the dean's list. I'm on the president's list. And like, I remember they called me into the office and I'm used to being called into the office. And I was like, damn, what did I do? I didn't think I'd do anything this time. And I'm sitting in there and the dean stands up, he looks at me and he shakes my hand. And I was like, I don't know what I did. He's like, you're on your list. You have all B's in all of your classes. I was like, nah, that can't be right. There must be something wrong here. And then the next semester, I got all A's. And then I went to a counselor on campus, Maria Romo. I will never forget her. We were talking about my next steps, and she was like, this description of your challenges with reading, it sounds like maybe you have dyslexia and ADD. At the time, I was like, what's that? And she's like, you've never been tested for this? I said, no. She said, how is that possible? I said, if you saw the schools I went to, you probably wouldn't be questioning that. So they got me tested for it. Not only did they get me tested for it, they got me into some special programs that even helped me even more figure out how to get this information into my head. So next thing I know, I'm able to transfer directly over to the state school. So now I'm at San Jose State. I'm having my first painting class. I'm loving it. I decided at that point, I don't want to do anything else with my life. The music thing is done. I just want to paint. That's all I want to do. Taking all these classes, having a great time, finishing up there. And one of my teachers says, you should apply to graduate school. I said, that sounds cool. He said, you should apply to Yale. No joke. I said, what's that? And he laughed at me until he realized that I was serious. My cousins are here. Do we know anybody who went to Yale? Is anybody in front? No. I never heard of Yale. I'm from Kalamazoo, Michigan. And what are you talking about? So once he finished laughing, he explained to me that this is one of the best schools in the country for art. And I said, oh, you said best, so I'm gonna try that. And I applied, all excited about applying to graduate school, and I got rejected. And then I applied again, and I got rejected again. And after I finished wiping away my tears, I said, they have no idea. I will apply for the rest of my life until I get into this school. And funny enough, the third time I applied, and this is the body of work that I applied with. This body of work is called Visual Quotations, and this body of work is essentially a historical survey of Black people and the history of painting. I had this art history class there at San Jose State, and when I was there, it was one of those survey classes, the survey classes where you have like the entire history of art in a very small book. I mean, a very large book, but a very short semester. It's just too much information for any class. So I'm in that class, and I'm gonna make a long story short. Basically, there's a tiny little section in the book about Black people in painting. And when I got to class that day, the professor said, we're skipping over this section because we don't have time to go over it. And I said, as the only Black person in the class, hey, this is important information to me, and it's obviously important because the author put it in the book, so maybe we should look at it. And she said, no, Titus, we don't have time for that. I raised my hand again. She's like, Titus, we don't have time for this. I said, well, I need to talk to you because this is really important information to me. Go to her office hours. I end up getting kicked out of her office hours. I go to the dean, and the dean tells me I can't force her to teach anything. And it was at that moment that I realized if I wanted to understand this history, I was going to have to find it for myself. That's not that uncommon. If you are a part of any marginalized group, you might find some resonance in what I said. You might find that you might have to go get your own books, go find your own teachers, and find your school out in the world someplace. It was incredibly upsetting to have to go through this experience, and yet I have to give her credit because it pushed me to create this body of work, and it was this body of work that got me into Yale, so I ain't that mad at her anymore. What's happening in these paintings is I started remaking every spot in that book, every painting in that book that had a Black person in the book. I used dry erase whiteboard because that's what we had in the classroom at the time, and it was these Black figures floating in these white spaces. Any painters in the room? Awesome. Don't ever paint on dry erase whiteboard. It's a horrible, horrible idea. The paint just like slides all over the place. It takes forever before you have any ground. But I was trying to be all conceptual. So that was like the beginning of that conversation. So that work gets me into Yale. And all I want to do in art school is just paint and draw. That's all I want to do. But we're taking these classes, and all of a sudden I'm in these contexts where people are telling me that art is dead. We're having this conversation, painting in particular, not art, painting is dead. And I'm utterly confused by this. I finally get to this place I want to get to, and nobody cares about the thing that I love so much. I mean, I have professors coming in my studio asking me why I'm making paintings. Don't you know nobody cares about this anymore? This is not the medium of choice anymore. And in some ways, I think they were just trying to be antagonistic, just trying to upset me, which worked. But it is an idea, a theory out there that painting is dead. And I remember one day in a critique saying to one of the professors, look, if painting is dead, then fine. I'm not gonna argue with you about that anymore. But if painting is dead, then I wanna be the person who does the autopsy. Because I wanna understand how something that's dead makes me feel so alive when I'm sitting in front of the canvas. I can be here all day long and literally forget to eat through this process. I need to understand this dead thing. I'm sorry y'all think it's dead. I think there's some more life in this. And so that idea started incorporating itself into everything that I was doing in the work. Brings us to this piece. So I'm thinking now that question, is it dead, has me thinking about the physicality of the object now. Not just painting on a surface. Now I'm thinking differently about this. I was in the process of making a painting about torture in the studio, Black folks who are being tortured, Black folks who are being whipped. And I was telling this story today, I remember feeling like I don't want to be doing this anymore. This is not feeling right to me. Something is not resonating on the inside. I have to pull back from the situation a little bit. So I'm working on the painting, I'm about to stop, and I realized that the problem is I'm making a painting about torture. All of a sudden, the question just got flipped in my head, and I said, well, what does it mean to torture a painting? Not to make a painting about something, but let the painting itself be tortured. And this is what happened. So that idea for me that the painting itself was this physical ground to explore led to every next phase in my work. The canvas wasn't just about being flat anymore. It was a battleground. So People tend to see my work. There was a little bit of a, when this painting comes up. Happens every time, every single time. I'm very proud that my children still like me. It's really weird. My son, who is in high school now, but when he was in 5th grade, this happened, his teacher asked me to speak for their class. I didn't want to do it because I thought I was going to like embarrass my son, right? So I told the teacher, nah, I'm good. I don't want to do that, you know, find somebody else. My son comes home the next day and is like, Dad, what are you doing? You were supposed to talk in my class. I was like, I thought I was going to like embarrass you. I didn't want to do that. He's like, oh, man, don't make me cool. What are you talking about? And I was like, oh, okay, all right, fine. So I think I'm going to give this talk to his class. The principal changes it. Next thing I know, I'm giving the talk to the entire school in the library. Now, it's a small school, but that means I'm no longer talking to just 5th graders. I'm talking to 1st graders. So this painting comes up, and there is that sound that happened here, but it's like from little kids. And this little blonde girl sitting in the front row, she's staring at me in the eye, and I'm talking. I was like, yes, Thomas Jefferson. This is about Thomas Jefferson and Sally Mae Hemings. Thomas Jefferson enslaved this woman who he was, I don't want to say had a relationship with because that's so complicated. He was taken advantage of. That's the most gentle way to say it. I think that's what I said. And this little girl looked at me and she said, what do you mean? And I paused, and I went, okay, she just means that like in a literal way. What I mean is that Thomas Jefferson enslaved hundreds of black people, and one of them he was in a relationship with. Her name is Sally Mae Hemings. This little girl goes, Thomas Jefferson had slaves? At that point, I stopped and I turned around to the teachers and I said, this is not fair. This is not my job. I should not be the first person telling her this. This makes no damn sense. And I tried to gently explain for the first time to this girl that this president that obviously she really had some thoughts about enslaved black people. In that moment, I realized why we have such a breakdown in our country. Because if some people are starting with this as a knowledge base, yes, we came from another continent, came here, we were enslaved, and people like presidents took our families in and forced us to work. And then other folks are growing up with a story about Thomas Jefferson that doesn't look anything like that. No wonder we have this great divide between us. This painting started not as like a political statement. That's not what I was trying to do. I was having a conversation with this American history professor in a high school class. She was a high school AP history teacher. I will not tell you, let me first start by saying this. I adore this woman. She's like 80 years old. She's super kind. We have zero in common in terms of politics, but that's okay. I like talking to people who don't agree with me. I'm sitting at her kitchen table and we're having a conversation. And in the conversation, we come up to Thomas Jefferson because she loves talking about Thomas Jefferson. And she taught AP history. And at some point in the conversation, she says, well, the thing about Thomas Jefferson is he was a benevolent slave owner. And I'm sitting in this chair and I'm looking at her and I just have no words. And I stutter for a minute and I say, like that little girl, I don't know what you mean. Can you please tell me what you mean? And she dropped her head. And so I pulled back a little bit because I needed to understand what she was trying to get at. can you please tell me what you mean? I mean, I speak English. I understand those words. Benevolent and slave owner, I understand those words separately. But when you put them together, that doesn't make any sense to me. So please, teacher, can you help me understand this? I sat in that chair. The clock was behind her, and it just went around, minute hand just went around, nothing. It went around again, nothing. It went around again, nothing. I got up from my seat, I walked over, I kissed her on her cheek, and I walked out. I went back to the studio. This is what happened. I'm not doing this stuff because I'm trying to make political statements. I'm doing this stuff because I'm trying to figure it out. I don't understand how that happens. That doesn't make any sense to me. She's a very, very intelligent person. And as I said, we have political differences, and that's fine, but that doesn't make any sense. But you know what's more terrifying? She taught American history for 40 years. 40 years. What does that mean? That means there's 40 years worth of students walking around with the idea that benevolent slave ownership makes sense. That is terrifying. And it further explains the reason why there's such a division in this country. Does it not? Am I wrong? Am I by myself here? So when I say, I'm not doing this stuff for, political reasons, this stuff is personal. I've tried to do it other ways. But if I don't have a personal connection, I can't really make the work. It turns out very, very, very bad. This painting was in Time magazine. And let me correct something right now. I have a painting that has been on the cover of Time magazine, but for some reason people keep saying this one was on the cover of Time magazine. It was not on the cover of Time magazine. It was in the cover of Time magazine. In Time magazine. Also, I never got Man of the Year in Time magazine. Let's just clear that up right now too, because that's being written in places, all right? So not accurate. I actually made this painting. When people talk about this painting, they put it within the context of all the Black Lives Matter stuff that was going on, and that's cool. And I make space for that, for sure. But this painting is about me and my brother, Tori. So my younger brother, Tori, and I are very different. We're very, very different, but I love my brother. When he was about 20, I think he was just about to turn 21. He was getting in trouble back home, and my mom sent him to be with me in Connecticut. My mom called me he has to get out of town for a few days. Can he come stay with you? My first question is what the hell did he do, and what are you getting me into? But yes, he can come. So he shows up at my house, and it's kind of like the same thing that it always is. My brother, at the time, let's be honest, still now a little bit too, is interested in two things: women and shoes. Those are the two things my brother is interested in. So when he got to my house, day one, blah, 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 women, blah, 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 shoes, blah, 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 when we gonna go out and see some shoes and women, blah, 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 blah. So I'm like, Jesus, Mom, what are you doing to me here? So the plan is I'm supposed to have this conversation with him about, staying out of trouble. I'm the big brother, blah, 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 blah. So day one, women and shoes. Day two, women and shoes. Day three, women and shoes. But at the end of that day, he said, so what's your art about? I was like, okay, this is a start. And I started talking to him about it a little bit. And he was like, well, let's go see some. I was like, yeah, let's do that. So the next day, we went to New York. And I'm thinking, this is just a ploy so we can go to Harlem so he can see women in shoes. So I'm like, this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna go to Chelsea first so we can see the art there a little bit, and then I know what's gonna happen. We're gonna end up in Harlem. That's all right, whatever. So we get to the Chelsea galleries and start walking around the gallery, seeing artwork, and something happens. I end up having conversations with my brother I've never had before. I am hearing him be vulnerable in ways I have never heard him be vulnerable before. And I will say to you that that's the power of art. Like, art can do that. Art can make spaces for conversations you couldn't normally have with people. So we're talking, we're going back and forth. We're at the gallery that is showing my artwork, and we walk in there, have a fantastic conversation. We're there for 2 hours. My mind is blown. So we leave the gallery, walk out the gallery, and as we're walking down the street in Chelsea, I'm like, this is the time. I need to talk to him. We're having, this good rapport. Mom wants me to talk to him. Let me talk to him. Okay, Tori, Mom wants me to talk to you because, no joke, whoop, whoop, undercover police car drives up to us. Now, it's not the first time this has happened to me. Definitely not the first time it happened to me. But I was in a headset. I was focused on something else. And so they jump out of the car and they have their hands on their guns. And they push up back against the wall. And I'm still not registering. I know how to deal with the situation. I've been in this situation a lot of times. I know what I'm supposed to do. I know where my hands are supposed to be. I know what I'm supposed to say. But I was having such a moment with my brother, I wasn't equipped. And I was walking down the street. It wasn't like I was driving or anything. And before you ask, no, I wasn't wearing a hoodie. I was wearing something like this. I always get fly. So it had nothing to do with what I was wearing. The police get out of the car, their hands on their guns, and they tell us to get up against the wall. And I'm like, what's going on, y'all? What's going on? They're like, we've been getting reports that 2 black men have been walking out of galleries for the last 2 hours, stealing artwork. I said, nah, y'all are confused, because first of all, that's my artwork, so I don't need to steal it. Secondly, if you've been watching us for 2 hours, as they said they were, then you know I didn't take anything. So what is this about? Because there's a lot of other people walking around here, and I don't see you stopping them. Help me understand what this is about. Now I'm getting upset. Rule number 1, don't get upset. Don't get upset. So my brother, who also has been through this situation a lot, is like, Ty, stop. Don't do that. I'm mad now. I'm mad because they got me hemmed up, sitting on the curb now with the collectors who buy my artwork walking up and down the street, having me look like a criminal. I'm trying to have a conversation with my brother about how to stay out of trouble. I can't just walk and live my life and do my thing. And I say to the police officer, how come my citizenship doesn't mean the same thing as that dude's citizenship over there? Help me understand that. Ty, stop. Officer takes my ID. Fine, take my ID, man, take my ID. Give me my shit back. I'm mad because I did nothing. I take the ID back from him, and the officer looks at me and he says, I hope you never find yourself in a situation where you need the police, because we just might not be there for you. And they get back and they walk away. This is not politics for me. This is my life. None of this stuff is about me trying to get into what's happening in the political universe. This is just stuff we deal with. This is just real life. My citizenship is different to some people. It's different to people who have the power and the authority in some strange way to take my life from me. So when I tell you I stepped away from this for a while, that was a part of it. Because I felt like I was trying to do this work and change, make things better. And as I'm working and struggling and having conversations and getting up on stage and trying to have conversations with people who I know believe differently than I believe, I'm still having to deal with this shit out in the street. So I stepped back. This is not political for me. It's never been about the politics. This became the point at which it was very clear that I was not going to be able to shroud how personal all of this stuff really was. The Jerome Project. I left my father's house when I was about 15 years old. I left my father's house after I had seen him commit a heinous crime. And at 15, I said, I can't be here. I don't think I'm going to survive if I keep myself in this context. So I gotta go. It's a long, convoluted story, but I ended up in California and a bunch of different places, and this Haitian family out in California decided to take me in. I more or less got adopted by them. 15-year-old black boys don't generally get adopted, but these folks took me in and completely changed my life. Fast forward, I'm in my 30s. I go back to Kalamazoo to visit grandma. And I roll up to her house. I have my son and my wife with me, 2 sons, my wife with me. And I get to the front, and my father is sitting on the stairs. Hadn't seen him in like 15 years. Actually, at that point, I think it might have been almost 20. My son says, Daddy, who is that? And I say, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. We're gonna go. And my wife looks at me, kind of like, is that your father? So we go into the house, and I tell him, we're not gonna do this. This is not the way for them to understand who you are. We're not having this conversation right now, so you can just stay here. I walked in the house, I greet my grandmother, she's sitting on the couch, and to my surprise, my father walks in behind me. Now I'm really frustrated because, as I said, I do not want them to meet my father this way. They're little at the time. So I'm telling him in no uncertain terms that he needs to leave. I am not having a conversation with him. Oh, but my grandmother. I don't know what your relationship with your grandmother is like, but my relationship with my grandmother was like what she said you did. It really wasn't up for debate. You might have thought she was asking you a question. She wasn't really asking you a question. That really wasn't a question. So my grandmother says, baby, I want you to talk to him. My grandma, dang. And I know I don't have a choice but to talk to him. So as grandma would say, I'm trying to be slick. I'm trying to figure out how to get out of this. I have a camera in my hand, so I say to my father, hey, you want to talk to me? Cool. I get to film you. If you want to talk to me, I get to film you because there's so much that you have to account for. And I want you backing out of it when we finally get you to confess the truth. He was supposed to say no. He said, great, be at my house in 15 minutes. I was like, damn it, that did not work. So I get to his house. I remember telling my wife, I'm only gonna be there for a few minutes. I'm not gonna stay long. I'm just gonna be able to tell grandma I did what I was supposed to do, and now I'm coming home. Don't worry about it. I'll be able to put the kids to bed. I was at my father's house for 3 days. I didn't really know what to do with him. He was a completely different person at that moment. I had 15 years of pent-up angst and anger and frustration and no place to put it. No place to put it. I turned on the camera and started asking him questions, and he answered with humility and repentance, and I had never seen that in him before. And I was raging on the inside because I had no way to deal with all of these years, all of this stuff. And when I get myself in that kind of situation, I usually end up just painting. I just go to the studio and I just paint. That's my space. It's my therapy, my couch, my psychiatrist. So I get back to Connecticut at the time, and I put the footage away, and I Google my father. I don't know why. I have no idea. I just Googled my father when I got back. Just ways of trying to process what had just happened. And when I Googled him, I found 97 other black men with exactly the same first and last name as my father. And all of their mugshots. it threw me off. And it further complicated the story because I couldn't just simply say it was all my father's fault, which is what I wanted to say. This is all your fault. But you know the neighborhood we grew up in. When I was growing up, we were talking about this earlier. Most of our fathers were either addicted to crack cocaine at that time or in prison. That wasn't an accident. That was the strategic destruction of a community. There was no investment in that community. This is a national health issue. And how do we deal with it? We threw people in prison. So I didn't know what to do, so I just started painting these mugshots of these men who share the same name as my father, and I submerged them in tar initially based on how much of their life was taken away by the institution. I didn't know what I was going to do with it. It was just like, this is just my process. This is what I do. I was not trying to talk about the criminal justice system in that way. I was trying to figure out my orientation to this man. It's all personal. This is called my loss. My cousin Jermaine died in prison, and that's for him. And that is my father. Whether I like it or not, it's all personal. Let's breathe for a second. I'm okay. It's heavy stuff, but it's real stuff, right? I'm not the only person who's been through this. I know right now there are people in this audience who have experienced that, and I'm talking to you. I'm talking to you because we can have a dialogue, and it doesn't have to feel like a pity party, and you're not pitying me because you feel that resonance of harmony from your experience, because my experience reminds you of your experience. Those are the folks I'm talking to right now. I apologize to the rest of you, but if I don't, I will just leave. I'm talking to them. So, I was in the museum today. I had taken this whole section out of this talk, but after my conversation in the museum today, I decided I have to bring this back. Again, another situation where I am not trying to have a political conversation, but this is just life. This is what happens. I didn't go to a lot of museums when we grew up. It just wasn't a thing that we did. And now museums, well, yours isn't, but in New York, museums are expensive, but that's a whole other thing. I'm taking my son to the Natural History Museum in New York, and we walk up to the front, and my son, Savian, sees this sculpture. Teddy Roosevelt on a horse, and a Native American on the left, and we don't know what tribe this African man is supposed to represent on the right. And my son, Savian, said, "How come he gets to ride and they have to walk?" And I stopped and I was like, that's a damn good question. And it was interesting because it's just like a simple question from a child. We can look at it and we'll get into how profound and deep that is and how proud I am of my child for answering that question. But what he was saying was, Davin gets 2 cookies, how come I don't get 2 cookies? Right? That's the kind of fair he's talking about. When you have children, you understand that's really what they mean. What do I get out of the situation? I want to make sure y'all all understand that. But I started thinking about this, and I started trying, it got me thinking about this monument and what it meant in particular. And of course, that sent me to the studio. And I started working on these different sculptures, these different projects that were about being in public spaces. And I started, as that was happening, we're starting to have this national conversation about taking down monuments. Now, let me just say from here, right now, you hear me say this. If we're having a binary conversation about keeping these monuments to these horrible things or taking them down, I say take him down. My question, though, is why does it have to be binary? I'm afraid that when you take things down like this, we forget how it got there in the first place. We forget what was manipulated, who was forgotten in order to get this thing up. Half the time, these public sculptures that we so detest aren't even good art. They're really bad. They're really, really bad. Some of them are bad. And I hear folks talking about like, oh man, you know, I can't handle seeing this thing in this space. I get that. If that's how you feel, that's how you feel. I don't care about it. I don't think it's that good. I think if you get Kehinde to put his sculpture next to that sculpture, you won't even think about that other one anymore. It won't even matter anymore. It will disappear. The problem is we put these sculptures in the center of communities as the only thing that's there. The problem is how we think about public monuments themselves. Public monuments are kind of like the periods at the end of sentences, and I don't think they should be that. I think it should be commas so that we can add another clause after that. Because I'm gonna make a public sculpture and my transgender friend is gonna say, hey, you forgot about me, Titus. And I'll be, no doubt, you're right. Here's a comma, step into that space. And then my sisters are gonna be like, oh, you forgot about me, Titus. You're right, let's get that too. Let's make sure we have all of these conversations. The problem is we think of these things as finite, the end, this is it, this thing stands by itself, like we cannot amend, alter, change the conversation, and I think we can. I'm not scared of those damn sculptures. I'm not, at all. I'll call Kehinde right now. Like, have you seen his public sculpture? Have you seen Hank Willis Thomas' public sculpture? These are my people. Those are magnificent pieces of art that can do battle with any of these things that we see in these spaces. My solution is that we actually invest more in artists of this time and call them to the public square and give them the funding and the support to actually make stuff that represents our time. How am I doing on time? I see this light here. I have 10 minutes. Somebody whispered from the background. That was beautiful. All of my work is like just about the things that are going on. In my life, in my experience, conversations I'm having with people I care about. My mother and I were talking about her fear of the death of her sons. My mother has 4 sons. She carries this weight of concern about what happens with her boys, and she has always carried that weight. And those conversations led to this body of work from a tropical space. For the record, this is the painting that was on the cover of Time magazine, not the other one, just to clarify that. I have never had this experience with a body of work before where I made a painting and I felt like the painting after said, there's so much more. There's so much more. It's not just this moment. You're missing some other stuff. This body of work led me into film in a way. Started making films because I felt like there's something that's happening before this and there's something that's happening after this, and I have to find a way to get to it. I want to share something with you. This is a piece I made with a very important person about this experience of Black mothers that was inspired by this body of work. This is short. And you said double click. And we did it again. You want me to do it again? You're gonna start it? Some magic hand is moving stuff right now. Wait for it. Oh, that's my mother. I'll take this. Hold on.
Brilliant. Man, you
you have any mentors? Did you have any people who were like encouraging you?
My mom was definitely my mentor. When we were younger, my mom would make like all our dresses and like all our tennis outfits, and she would have these old patterns, like these Vogue patterns that she would pin, and she would cut it out, and then she would sew it, and she taught me how to sew. I've known how to sew since, I don't know, since as I can remember, because I remember stealing socks and making dresses for my dolls. At the time, I didn't know that we couldn't afford it. It was just something creative, and it was just something cool to do.
When we were looking at the Time magazine piece, you put your hand in front of it, and we were remarking on like how similar your hand looked.
It takes a whole different meaning seeing it in person, because I can see the pressure is almost as if she's holding, or she's trying to hold on to that baby, and you could see the muscles in my hand, and then the flexion, and then like the tendons of my hand are just trying to hold on to the child. And as a mom and just loving my kids so much, like I want to give her a hug. My daughter is that African American moms just don't get the attention they need in hospitals. African American moms and women of color, and women of color. Sometimes you just need a voice. Sometimes people don't know. What I've learned when I had my daughter is that African American moms and women of color just don't get the attention they need in hospitals. For me to go in a hospital, I had to be very firm and say, I'm not breathing, and I need help. I was just thinking, like, of course they wouldn't listen to you. Like, your voice isn't big enough. The one misconception is Black women are very strong. And we carry that because we've carried the family for centuries. And so, yeah, we're strong, but we're having a child. This is our vulnerable moment. This is a moment where we need to be taken care of. This really speaks to me because of the struggles that women of color and Black women have to go through when they're having a baby, and so many people didn't make it, to be honest. shadowing in her eyes, this lighting, the white in it that kind of pierces through. I could still be standing there for hours just looking at her eyes. And then the size, I love the size because I love seeing a Black person on a canvas, huge, bigger than big, like, and just having someone that my daughter can see and that represents me, that has my nose, that has my color. It's emotional. It's really deep.
The day you were born, I thought I'd never stop bleeding. The doctor was a stranger to me. He grabbed the forceps off the steel tray. I passed out. I remember dreaming I was in a big white room filled with other Black women. All mothers. Each mother was given a chance to tell her story, a testimony. It was beautiful every time.
For our mother, who carried, lugged, dragged, battled, cradled our pain, our broken hearts, dreams, bodies, her pain. Let us carry, lug, battle, cradle your sorrow, your fear. On this back, these arms, built, sculpted, molded by you, we bear your burden, this load, this weight, guarding your vulnerable moment. A whisper held your moment, a whisper held your love. I hold your love. Thank you. Just to say one last thing. I hope you like that, especially to all the mothers out here. Somehow, I started making these movies, and this last one I made is shortlisted for an Oscar. So we find out on the 24th about that. So fingers crossed. I'm blazing through this really quick. I just want to say this. I feel like my life has been changed by art fundamentally. I mean, if you look at my trajectory where I started at, without the intervention of art and that amazing woman who is my wife, I definitely wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be on this stage. And so if you have an opportunity to support artists in your community, please make sure you do that. We've started a program called NXTHVN, which is a 45,000 square foot arts incubator in the heart of a historically Black neighborhood in New Haven, Connecticut. We focus on Black and brown artists and helping them navigate the business of the art world. Each artist who comes into our program, there are 7 artists, 2 curators. Each artist who comes into our program gets $35,000, studio space for a year, housing for a year, professional development, and the most important thing is our high school apprenticeship program. Our high school students come in and work with these artists, and they get paid to be there. So if you have programs like this in your community that are working to help support artists, please support them. Please give them money. But if you don't, you can always go to nexthaven.com. I'm the president of the organization, so I got to do it. Thank you guys so much. Appreciate it. We're supposed to have a question and answer thing. So for those of you who have to leave, I'm not mad at you. If you have a question, come up to the mic. Or we could just leave too.
Oh. No, folks, if you're leaving, do so really quietly, because I can already see the folks coming to the microphones. We do have questions. And we only have a very short time period for questions, so don't be upset when we cut off the questions. Be so happy you got to see the amazing Titus Kaphar, finally here in Ann Arbor. Bless you, sir. And let's get started with questions right away. My colleague Jim Leha from UMMA will end the Q&A for us on time. You have to remember, this is a theater that has other shows that follow us. Don't get mad at us. All right, take it away, Titus.
Start here.
Hi, your speech really touched me and my friend.
I can't hear her, sorry.
I was really touched by your presentation, and I was just wondering, do you have any apprenticeship for college students where we can work with you or contact you in any way?
That's really interesting. We do have them at NXTHVN. We do. Yeah, we do. And you can find out about that at nexthaven.com.
Can I have your autograph?
Seriously? Jesus. There you go. It's nice to meet you. All right. Oh, sorry, I should probably run back and forth. Yes.
Hi, I just want to say how grateful I am for that talk. As the stuff, what you do with art is just so powerful, but what you're also doing by speaking, also powerful. I'm the writing teacher here at the school, and I want to just kind of assert a little bit of a lesson for my students by asking you this question. You ask a lot of really good questions, and I try to teach my students how important it is to ask questions that come from a personal place, and then you'll find the universal. Can you just speak to how important it is to just keep asking questions and believe in them?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the only way you are able to touch anything that's universal. If you set out to do something universal, it won't be. It'll be contrived, and everyone who looks at it will feel that. But if you're willing to be vulnerable and honest and get really, really close with yourself, and you make work from that place, that's when you touch on something special. That's, in my practice, is the only way it's ever happened. It's the only way. Anytime I try to be all smart, it doesn't work.
I'm glad that you believed in your own questions so much too, and I hope that they all remember that. Thank you.
All right, so we're just gonna go. I'm gonna stand in the middle because this running back and forth thing ain't working for me.
Okay. Hi, my name's Isabella, and I watched your TED Talk a few years ago, and I never connected with one and enjoyed one more than that.
I appreciate that.
I really wanted to ask, so in a lot of your pieces you use this powerful negative space, and we often work with focal points, but you choose to use this white space as the focal point.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask if in your everyday life or when you're working in the studio, is there a way that you visually or physically organize your space to create space for negative space when you're working? Or is there a way that you help to kind of get over that?
That's a really good question. Actually, at this point in my practice, it's just completely a part of my consciousness. I realize that when I remove something, it makes me ask, where'd you go? More questions, right? So when I just leave you the silhouette there, all of a sudden there's so much more implied. You don't completely know what was there, and it makes you engage. It makes me engage, and I'm always my first audience. I don't really think about y'all in the studio. Y'all are not allowed in the studio. For me, when I'm in the studio, I am the most self-indulgent person I can possibly be, for the same reason that we talked about. When I start to think about what everybody else might think about the work and everything, it goes in a bad direction. So that negative space, that absence, is now just completely a part of my practice. It's like another color on my palette.
Thank you so much.
No problem.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, my name is Grace. I've been a really big fan of yours for years, so I was really excited when you were doing this talk. My question is about the materiality in your pieces. I really admire the way you work beyond the basic canvas. And I was wondering if you can give us more insight into your process of how you go about doing that.
It happened accidentally. It happened, these questions started to emerge in my head. I told you about the shredding of the painting. It happened with the whitewash too, and that goes back to that negative space. I was working on a painting. It was two people in the painting. It was a man and a woman. It was based on a historical portrait, and I had painted the painting the best I possibly could, and it was not working, and I couldn't figure out why. I grabbed a bucket of gesso, oil-based gesso, and I was about to whitewash the painting. I was about to whitewash the painting and just start it over. But I started with the dude, and I just wiped him out. And then I stepped back and went, wait, something's happening here. Something's really happening here. And as I thought about it, sat with the painting, what I realized is I'm telling the story of this woman whose husband abused her regularly. I'm re-injuring her by painting her, showing her beside him again and again. And somehow I felt uncomfortable with that, but wasn't completely conscious of it until I whited it out. And once I whited it out, I was like, boom, painting's done. That's it. So I just try to keep myself open to whatever's happening in the studio. I don't do commissions. I really don't like commissions. The only commissions I do is where you say you get to do whatever you want and give me your money. That's only commissions I do. Just in case anybody out here is thinking about asking me to do a commission. Because when the painting tells me to go left, I go left. And if you've paid me go right, I'm still going left. So I want to disappoint you, don't do commissions.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm Elijah.
Hey, Elijah.
And I had a plan for what I was about to say, but that shit went out the window, so I stepped up here. So I do it's not really a question. I just want to say that, one, if you can't see it, you can't be it. So I appreciate that. Two, it is a very rare talk that gets me to close my iPad and stop making shit while people are talking. And you did that, so I appreciate that.
I win.
And yeah, I've never really been exposed to your work before, but this is my first time being exposed to both you and your work. And yeah, I haven't really ever had a role model in 23 years of living, and you might fit that bill. I don't really know yet. I don't know yet. I'm not, that's what I wanted. That's all I came up here for. But yeah, thank you.
I appreciate that, man.
Hi, my name is Ebba. I'm a student here.
Hi, Emma.
My younger brother is really into fashion design. I know if he were here tonight, he would really, really respect and admire you, but he has never done well in school. He doesn't like classes, formal education. What can you say about your experience with formal education? How did it shape you as an artist and as a person?
I had such a bad experience with formal education that when my kids got to that age, I homeschooled them. Because I had a very my youngest son was super hyper, and I know the ways that we get young boys into classrooms, and if they're not sitting down in their seat when they're supposed to be sitting down in the seat, we turn them into a problem. And my son was not a problem. So I for the first several years of my kid's life, my wife and I, we homeschooled because we just didn't want to deal with that. I have seen more people's education disrupted and damaged by school than you can possibly imagine. And every time I give a talk, it's something that comes out. And this is part of the reason why I feel like arts are so important. But we have this thing sometimes now where it's you can't get into the art class if you don't have this grade, if you don't have this class or whatever. And I don't think it should be that way. So, I mean, I would just tell your brother to keep his head up and follow that art if that's actually his passion. Go down that road. Yeah. I'm sorry to hear that. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Santana.
Hi, Santana.
A lot of my practice involves evaluating race and my own identity, and it's really heavy. So I guess my question is, how do you find the space to take a step back when it's becoming mentally too much as an artist?
So when we started NXTHVN, we didn't have this program, but over the last few years, we have developed a wellness part of our program. I forgot to tell you about that. That's also a feature. So we have a psychologist that our artists get to meet with whenever they want to meet with them. We have a nutritionist who meets with them whenever they want to meet with them to talk about the ways in which what you eat impacts how you feel, right? So we're in a moment where a lot of us are talking about that kind of like that space and that wellness and things like that. And I don't want to use all, I'm stumbling a little bit because I don't want to use all the language that everybody else uses because it feels a little bit trite right now. What I will say is you have to find a way to make time for that. You have to. You have to. I am not a person who believes that art only comes out of pain. That can't be true. It can't be true. A lot of my work comes out of pain, but I promise you in the process of making it, there is joy there. And so for me, it becomes the work itself becomes the process of the healing. If you can find a way to make it cathartic for you, then that might be the answer to the question.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, my name's Kai, and right now I'm working on my thesis, and I just thought about it like a couple of days ago and finally solidified it, but it has a lot to do with my experience and my mother, and thinking about ceramics. And how would you feel about someone referencing your work in their own?
I'd be honored. I'd be absolutely honored. I mean, are you asking?
Yeah, just
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Just, email me some pictures after.
Okay,
yeah.
Well.
Appreciate it.
I'm going to jump in and let us know we have about 5 minutes left. So I would suggest that we take all three at the same time.
Yep.
And then you can respond.
Okay. Wait, take all three questions at the same time?
Yeah, let's hear from all three.
You think my memory is better than it is. Sorry, go ahead.
I'm going to do this as quick as possible. I'm Julia, I'm 17, and both my mother and I are really huge fans of your work. I'm especially a huge fan of the Jerome Project. I love the symbolism, and this is like a quite simple question if you don't mind. So this is about like what really motivates you to finish a drawing? What motivates you during the process, like despite going through art block, let's just say? What really motivates you to complete a piece?
The truth of the matter is, only time I get art block is when I stop making. That's it. It's the only time. My mantra is work makes work. Not good work makes work. You'll make a lot of bad stuff, but as long as I keep moving, I don't get blocked. I get blocked when I stop, right? And so like make a choice that I'm gonna go to the studio today and I'm just gonna work. And for me, and this is not the same for everybody, for me, it always sparks something. And generally, one piece leads to the next piece, which leads to the next piece, which leads to the next piece. And that one in between is probably not good, but it's okay because it's a bridge to the one that is going to be good. Thank you.
Oh.
I said I wasn't going to run back and forth, but I want to see people, so.
Hello, I'm a little short, but hi, I'm Alea. I want to say thank you. I feel inspired. I'm a little nervous talking in public, so don't mind my. But basically, I want to say thank you. I haven't really been inspired since senior year in high school. So it's like I used to make deep and like intricate work like yours, but I stopped because I dropped out of college. So I only made like character designs, and it was kind of.
Don't say only. Don't say only.
But kind of like. Your work kind of made me feel like going back to that. And I was like, I really appreciate that. Also, another question, do you accept all forms of art? So like, I do a lot of photography.
Yes, we do.
And digital art.
Yep, and you're not required to have any educational background.
Okay.
We don't have a MFA, a BFA, there's none of that. Because that just becomes a way of keeping people out, and you end up keeping out really good people. So you don't have to have finished to come to the program, apply to the program. It's really competitive, and like I tell the story about applying to Yale and not getting in the first time, but that's all right. That's all right. Just keep on applying.
Thank you.
It's nice to talk to you.
Nice looking.
Okay, last one.
You talked a lot about how like your art relates to you specifically, and how like you relate other people's experience to yourself. So I just wanted to ask, like, what is your thought process for when you're like relating your art to other people, I guess? So how do you consider other people in relation to your art?
You mean after the thing is already made or during the process of making it?
Either. I just want to know.
I don't do it during the process of making it. Like I said, I don't think about y'all. Y'all don't matter. Like, I'm sorry, you just don't. Like, I only allow myself to go there once the work is actually complete, because that thing that happens, that editor, that critic in our head just like gets really, really loud. Really, really loud. And if I start thinking about all of you, that critic in my head gets louder and louder. So I actually have a kind of like, sometimes I have a physical process that I go through when I start hearing that head. I will go to my door, I will open the door, and I will kick the editor out of the door, and then I will go back to my work. It's just something for me in my head that helps me go, stop, 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 stop. Those are all the wrong things right now. Just focus on the thing that you're making. So I try really hard to keep those voices out as much as possible. After, when it's time to put it out in the world, then really it's on you, right? At that point, it's you. You come to me and tell me that you like or don't like or whatever. And at that point, once I've like taken it outside of myself, it's in the world now, I don't get too emotional, I don't get too sensitive about it. You can tell me you don't like my stuff, I'm totally fine with that. Cool. All right, I'm done. Thank you.